The Dead Pixel Society podcast is brought to you by Media Clip, Advertech Printing, and Got Photo. Welcome to the Dead Pixel Society podcast, the photo imaging industry's leading news source. Here's your host, Gary Pageau.
Hello again and welcome to the Dead Pixel Society podcast. I'm your host, Gary Pageau, and today we're joined by Adam Pratt, an author and founder of Chaos to Memories. He's a professional photo organizer, software trainer, and photographer. Hi, Adam. How are you today?
Hey, Gary. Thank you. And I've been looking forward to this.
So, Adam, let's talk a little bit about, before we get into the photo organizing piece of the interview, let's talk a little bit about your story that got you to this point. Photo organizing isn't normally a career path that's talked about in college or anything like that. So what's your story in photography? How did you get here?
Yeah, great question. It is a unique work and it does have a story behind it. So if we rewind many, many years, when I was in elementary school, I had older family members, uncle who was a professional photographer, and he taught me how to shoot like for real with an SLR and film and rolling my own film and developing my own film in the bathroom and all of that. So I grew up around photography and always loved it. Stayed in the photography world. And then fast forward about 21 years ago was when we had our first child. We've got 4 kids, and I don't think there's anybody as snap happy in the world as a parent of toddlers, right?
Exactly.
So, and that was actually the same time that there was the transition from analog to digital, in the early 2000s. And so I just kind of went nuts. And then I realized I kind of had a problem on my hands with all of these photos. And so it was really out of necessity that I started curating and organizing my own photos in the digital realm, loved it. And then I looked back and I thought, wow, our family has about 100 years of generational photos. What do I do with those? So I figured that out. And then I thought, I can't be the only guy who wants all of his photos safe and shareable and searchable. Right. And so that's kind of where it started.
And you also spent some time at Adobe.
I did. I spent a lot of time at Adobe. I've got a photography and a design background, and joined Adobe also in the early 2000s, maybe the year 2000, and actually spent 22 years there. And it was a great place. Mm-hmm. I believe in the company. I love the products. Even though I left Adobe this spring, we still use all of the Adobe products in our studio. But had a great run and was excited to do something new on my own.
Chaos to Memories is a great name for what it is, because I don't know anybody who doesn't acknowledge that they've got a photo problem, an organizational problem. So how long have you been doing that as a business?
Yeah, so I tackled our own family photos about 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And then about 5 years ago, I thought, that's when I had that epiphany. There's got to be other people who want this. Mm-hmm. So it was just about 5 years ago that I started Chaos to Memories. We incorporated here in the state of Illinois, where we live and work. And I started taking on clients, and it has grown. The business has grown, the client list has grown, and my team has grown since then. So we're coming up on 5 years.
And let's talk a little bit about the book. From Rocky Nook is the publisher, and the book is called Declutter Your Photo Life, Curating, Preserving, Organizing, and Sharing Your Photos. Now, who is this for? Is this for a beginner, for an intermediate person, or a more advanced photo organizing devotee?
Without being cheeky, I think there's something in there for everyone. And
every author says that. Come on.
Right. I know. But on one level, it's a high level workflow overview. So even if you're a beginner and you're not sure where to start, you're going to get a bunch of kind of best practices. You're going to learn about basic things like resolution and formats and how to organize, just some high level framework stuff that can save you a lot of research and hassle and kind of dead ends. And yet even friends of mine who are, that run similar businesses, we're kind of in the same circles, I'm getting great feedback from them who are reading the book, and they are finding some practical details about, like, for example, how we use Lightroom to curate when people frankly take too many photos. Like, how do you get through that efficiently, right? How do you deduplicate? How do you curate? How do you do some of this when the numbers are just overwhelming? How do you do it efficiently? So that's why, I do think there's some helpful material there, regardless of where you're coming from.
So let's say I was in my local photo retailer and I'm just browsing the bookshelves and I see this book, and maybe I've just had my pictures scanned at this retailer. They've given me a DVD or a flash drive or a hard drive or a cloud key or something. Can I use this book to help me get through that process? I think that's one of the challenges people have after the scanning process is none of those scans have the right date, and there's really no metadata attached to them. Right. So where would you suggest people start?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the most challenging client projects that I've taken on is exactly what you talked about. It was somebody who had a large collection of printed photos. She was smart enough to know that it was better to scan the negatives. The problem was she separated out the negatives, but didn't have a system for matching them back to the prints. So in the end, she had 12,000 prints, 12,000 unmatched negatives, and then 12,000 scans.
Right.
And then she came to me and was like, and she had actually had the scans done. And she came to me like 4 years later, and she admitted she had never looked at the scans.
Right.
It was just too, what do you do with 12,000 just crazy scans?
Right.
Nothing. She didn't even look at them. It was too overwhelming. So we helped her merge all that back together and do the things that you're talking about, where we go back and we look at the envelopes and say, okay, based on this receipt or this postmark or the date stamp on the print, something like that, we try to get clues and we redate those things, and we redate them digitally. So when you look at a file, you look at a photo with like high tube socks, that's 1985.
But those are coming back though.
Well, it could be, right?
Deceptive.
Right. Fashion cyclical. I know. But you look at those clues, and the book covers things like redating those things so they actually make sense, not just to you, but to future generations. Sure. And then also adding embedded searchable keywords of key things like people, events, and places, so you can find and share, what you're looking for.
Speaking of keywords, let's say I've seen people go crazy with keywords. Yeah. Right. And does that really help? I mean, what is the optimal number of keywords for, let's say, just a family snapshot? Obviously, key people, their names are important, but what else might be important? Like, is a generic term like vacation helpful, or does it have to be like Grand Canyon vacation?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I've got two ideas there. One is I remind people all the time, including my own staff, who can sometimes get a little like gung-ho about the keywording that we do. I remind them that the keywords are for the people, right? Like, we don't want to be slaves to the keywords. And the example I use all the time, like if there's a beach ball at the beach in the photo and it's really important to you, like it's a great memory, then you should tag that. But if it's just a beach ball and you don't care and you're never going to search for it, then don't bother tagging it, right? It's just not worth it. So it's important that we put ourselves in the shoes of our clients and say, what matters to you? And we do that as with every new project. We learn the people, the places you live, the places you go on vacation, things like that are helpful. Because it's all about searching, and it's about searching because it's about sharing. So if you can find the photos and the memories you care about, share them. That's the goal. The other principle that I would give is, if you're tackling this project yourself or you're doing it for others, we talk about working from general to specific. So a simple example is, let's say you go on vacation to Hawaii. You could keyword those vacation and Hawaii real quickly, like, all 500 photos in like 2 seconds, super easy. And you do those in batch, right? We're not doing this one at a time. But then if a subset of those photos were at the beach, then you take those subset and tag those beach. So you can really add some useful keywords to large numbers of images by doing it in batch. And it's pretty quick. And then it's up to you to decide how specific do you get, right?
So what proportion of your business, your work, is scanned stuff? And are you doing the scanning, or do you have an out lab for that? Or how? I mean, I'm just curious, because it seems to me like there's a market for organizing people's current digital catalog or photo catalog, but the gold mine is the trillions of images that are stuck in shoeboxes somewhere.
That's right.
What specifically do you offer?
Yeah, so we like the variety of the work we do. So we do a little bit of everything. So that includes digital organization of all the stuff on the devices and phones and clouds. We scan photos, and we do all of this in-house. We do a really high-end archival scanning of print, slides, negatives, everything.
So what are you scanning those on? What do you just got? I'm just curious. What do you?
Yes. So that rig, it's a camera scan rig. We've got Canon 5 DSRs, and 100 millimeter macro lenses. So you've got nice flat field of view, 1:1 reproduction, 50 plus megapixel
for
capture.
Even snapshots, even for 4x6s?
We do, which I know sounds a little crazy, but if you compare the results we're getting out of that with either a flatbed, which is really slow, or even like the auto feed scanners, like Kodak used to make them. Now Epson does. Brother has one. The color is not great, and maybe I'm a little bit of a snob with like my Adobe and photography background, but like I challenge you to show me a black that's actually black, that's not like magenta or purple or. The sensors are not great. So we would rather. So
you're actually, do you have like at least an auto feeder or something? Or are you just dropping those down 10,000 pictures at a time?
Yeah. So the people on the podcast can't see this, but I'm twinkling my fingers. The auto feeders are our hands. We do it all by hand.
Wow.
And my philosophy about this, having done my own photos, is this is a big project. It's an important project. I only want to do it once. So let's just do it right. You know what I mean? Like, let's do it right. And here's the other thing that I found, Gary, honestly, is the scanning is, when you're doing a big project, the scanning is actually only kind of a small part of it. The pulling everything out of albums and boxes and envelopes, resequencing, cleaning, reboxing in new envelopes. That actually takes a lot more time than the scanning. So the little bit you might save, like on an auto feed scanner of mediocre quality, like in the big picture, it's really nothing. I'd rather do it right and just do it once.
That's pretty impressive, because I'm just thinking I don't want to think about how long it takes to do 10,000 pictures that way, but you have clients who will pay for that. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that's cool about camera scanning that we love, and this is why it's the only method we use, and we offer a great course on it, is that it works for everything. So literally in the studio this week, we have scanned large format negatives, 35 millimeter slides, prints. I scanned a 24 by 36 inch print. And then last week I scanned handwritten letters. This is kind of crazy, from May of 1863. These are family letters from the front line of the Civil War.
Okay.
And so the ability to do all of those different kinds of media in one little 2 by 2 foot footprint on a copy stand, that flexibility is helpful for us, and could be really helpful for your listeners who are like, hey, maybe I want to offer scanning. Maybe I want to have like a little bit more flexibility, but I don't want to have like 5 pieces of equipment, right? A big scanner, a slide scanner, a flatbed, a sheet fed. Like it kind of gets crazy.
The sheet fed fast scanners is kind of what started the industry, but there's also, like you said, Kodak's not making them anymore.
Right.
And I would say the Epson, where it's a great product, it is more consumer grade. It's not what I would call professional.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get a decent scan out of it, but it's going to jam and have some issues there. So
yeah, that's the trick. I mean, I've spent a lot of my life in marketing, so I understand marketing, and you can say like, yes, we can do X hundred an hour, but that, doesn't necessarily include the fact that you got to stop and clean it every 100, right? So all of a sudden your like massive throughput isn't as massive. And so, we do have some tips and techniques that make it a little bit faster on the camera rig. And again, I'm just aiming for quality. So that's where we go.
And because of your background with Adobe, you're kind of wed to the Adobe Lightroom or Adobe Cloud products, right? Is that kind of what you recommend?
It is. And, I guess I'm going there for a couple of reasons. One, familiarity. I've grown up on these apps for decades. But the other big reason we use them is their supportive standards, because I realize, you and I have been around these worlds, stuff comes and goes, right? Like cloud services come and go, apps come and go. So we're really big proponents of open standards. So, industry standard metadata, industry standard file formats. So if you change your phone or change your web hosting company or somebody goes out of business, you still have all your stuff. You're not tied into any one company. So that's really important to us.
Is your business national or local there in Illinois? I mean, how do you get clients for that piece? Because it sounds like you have a staff, and most of the photo organizers I know don't have staffs. They've got themselves and maybe a spouse or something involved.
Yeah, it depends on how you count. We are a local business. We work our studios in the Chicago suburbs, but actually just currently, I was just looking at our internal systems. We currently have 27 clients in-house coming from 7 states and 3 countries. So people are finding us all over. We don't do any advertising. Maybe we will one day, but we're so busy without it that people are finding us really from word of mouth and the reputation of the work we do. And everything happens on site. So we do all the scanning. We do actually, I don't know if I mentioned, but we also do a lot of video conversion. So we support over 30 formats of video conversion, film reel conversion, audio tapes, all that kind of stuff.
Wow. That's a whole nother, now you can't do those on a Canon DSLR.
No,
so.
we have a museum worthy collection of old electronics. Keeping those things alive is one of our biggest challenges. But
VHS-C cassette adapters are like gold these days.
You know it. Yeah. And we go back even before that. We do Betamax, Super Betamax, U-Matic. We do all the old stuff. So, so we enjoy that. But yeah, so we do it all on site here in Chicago. About half of our clients are around Chicago, and half of them are around the country, and a few international that find us and trust us to do good work.
Yeah, because that's the other piece that I think. I mean, there's nothing wrong, I guess, with the send away services. I got a lot of friends who are in that businesses, but it seems to be like for something like photo organizing, there is that. I don't trust the Postal Service. I don't trust FedEx. I don't trust USPS.
Sure. So
I think that is an advantage to a lot of businesses to make hay of that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because I tell clients all the time. I just had a client call this morning with a new client. We're in the Midwest. She's out East. And we talked about her shipping her materials. And I said, listen, there is a risk to you sending that to us. We're going to send it FedEx. Here's some tips and tricks, some best practices for shipping it. I said, there is a risk in shipping that. There's also a risk in doing nothing with it for another 20 years. You know, like when she says, my mom passed away 20 years, we cleaned out the house. We haven't done anything with it yet. Right. Like there's some inertia there, and we want to help people with that. So yeah, we would just rather them get it done. And I say all the time, so it's me right now, and I have a staff of 6. And I say all the time, I don't want to run a factory, right? Like I know about the huge big box online ship, and they've got, 5,000 VCRs kind of a setup. We don't want to do that. We really enjoy the work, but we also enjoy the relationships with our clients. We just had a client pick up this morning. Like she cried when she saw her parents' wedding photos. We hugged when she left. Like she loves what we do. And so I want to do great work, but I don't want to lose that relationship.
So how do you deliver the scans? Is it, hard drive, DVD, flash drive, combination of both? Do you offer any like photo books or printing of anything or?
Yeah, great questions. So we do a couple things. So kind of on a smaller project, we would deliver on a thumb drive. And we normally try to give them 1 or 2, like as a backup, or give this to your sister or your kid or something like that. We don't deliver on DVD because unless you're really meticulous and you're using like the gold M discs, they don't last very long. They can be toast really fast. So we don't do any optical media, all thumb drives. And then if it's a bigger project, like on Friday, we're delivering a pretty large project, scanning and video conversion project to a local client. And those will go on hard drives. And so we'll have a main drive, a backup, and then they'll actually have an offsite that they'll like keep at the office or in the safety deposit box at the bank. Again, bigger project. So we delivered that digitally. Most of our clients, we offer to set up a SmugMug account for them. A lot of people are familiar with that, but what we love about SmugMug is it's unlimited storage, it's cloud-based, it's super affordable, and it supports all the standards that we support, like file formats and searchable metadata. So if they're like out to lunch or on vacation and they want to share their perfectly like curated searchable photos, they don't have to have a laptop and a hard drive, right? They need a phone, a tablet, a smart TV, a web browser. They can access everything anywhere they're at. So that's pretty cool. So that's like the digital delivery. And then as you alluded to, we do physical products as well. So we love to design photo books. I've got some prints arriving today for another local client of his ancestors that we scanned and retouched. So we love to give curated archives, but there's nothing like getting it back in your home, in your office, on your walls. Like that's the magic. That's my favorite thing to deliver, is like a nice canvas or a metal print or a book. We love it.
Because I do think that's one of the things I think maybe people miss the connection on when they do these services. They focus on maybe the scanning side, but not the organization side, or the organization side, but not the output side, or, you know, that. And I think that it's interesting how you've managed to connect the dots in those areas.
Yeah, well, I think you're right. I completely agree with you. I think there's like 3 phases to this. From a business perspective, if you want to do this well, if all you're doing is scanning, I think, you know, frankly, you're making about a third of the money, like, because that's a third of it. I know a lot of folks who scan and just turn it back, and I'm like, wait, you're not done yet. Tag it, redate it, make it searchable. You know, getting 5 or 10,000 scans back, like, or even 200, like, it's just overwhelming. So I think the organization is the second leg. And then I think the third leg that honestly has been kind of a weak spot for us that we're getting better at is the physical products, prints, canvas, metals, acrylics, beautiful books, all of that stuff. And nobody's going to brag or show anybody else a hard drive or a thumb drive. And just know,
look at my hard drive of memories. Ooh,
right. But we just delivered a client project with a beautiful book for his family dating back to the late 1800s. It's stunning. Like him, his mother, they just loved it. Like, that's where the magic is. You got to do the other 2 to get there. But that's a sweet payoff at the end of a project.
So one of the things you touched on was kind of interesting, is you said people, like, you had a client whose mother had passed away 20 years ago, and they've kind of inherited this. So unfortunately, they've got a ton of pictures that they don't know anything about because the metadata passed with the people, right?
That's right.
So what do you recommend to people who have collections now, and they may have older family members who could provide context for the pictures? What would you recommend for them to capture that and incorporate that into their pictures?
Yeah, so that is a challenge, but we do have some cool workflows that we do where we deal with that all the time. So our favorite is actually, we use SmugMug again, but in a different way. So we, instead of the client having their SmugMug account where they have all their family photo archive, we have our account. We temporarily put a subset of their scanned images, kind of the mystery images on there. We share that with the client and ask them to share that with their cousins, aunts, uncles, parents, etc. And so when we do that, everybody can comment on those and leave comments like, oh, that's Uncle Jack. That's, that's his Plymouth. That's his, whatever, like the stories behind it. When they have added those comments in, and the funny part is sometimes when they correct each other, like, oh, no, that's not Aunt Susie. Like, you can see the comment thread. And then what's great is, because we're using Adobe Lightroom Classic for all of our organizing, we can connect Lightroom with SmugMug and just sync all those comments right back into our workflow and see the comments, the dates, the names, everything that's been, added to that. And then we're using that effectively to crowdsource that missing metadata.
Okay. Well, that's pretty interesting. And of course, you got the Adobe plugin there, but that's okay. So so the book is out. So the book is really designed for people, the end user, the consumer, right?
Yeah, I think the end user consumer who wants to get a handle on their workflow, as well as more serious either companies or photo organizers that kind of want to up their game and add more to their services and understand the big picture. Here's the thing. I've been organizing photos, as I said, for like decades. And even before that, I was doing a lot of digital asset management for publishing companies. So I've got that background. And I have done so much research. I've tried so many things. And one of my biggest motivations for writing this book is to save you the hassle of like going down all those dead ends, right? Like people think of different ways to organize their photos, and it works really well for like a month. And then they're like, oh, wait, this is not going to hold up. Right. So I'm trying to just share all of that experience so that if you want to tackle it, you can. And again, kind of only do it once and hopefully not run into too many dead ends.
So for people in the business, you do offer some workshops and things. Is that correct?
We do. Yeah. We've got about 8 courses online that are self-paced, open access. And it's everything from a complete photo organizing workflow with Lightroom, including like digital and scanned material. We have a camera scanning course. We have, and we also get into some niche stuff, like, it sounds a little goofy, but it's one of our most popular ones. It's all about fixing dates, whether it's scanned material or whether it's digital stuff you get off cameras where you download 10,000 photos and they're all wrong. And it's just like, what in the world, right?
Well, yeah, back even the early days of digital, people weren't setting the date on their cameras right.
Correct. And sometimes those early cameras that were running, it's crazy as it sounds, that were running off like AA batteries. When you'd pull those batteries out, they didn't have a backup battery and they'd reset.
Right.
And nobody knew it. Right. So yeah. So we've even got, kind of advanced courses like that, helping those kind of niche workflows, a little bit of everything.
Great. So where can people go to get more information about your business? And then we'll mention the book after that. Yeah.
So the best way to find us is online. Our website is Chaos to Memories, not the number 2, TO, chaos2memories.com.
Right.
And if you're on Instagram and you enjoy that, we kind of share some of our projects and fun little findings there. So again, Chaos to Memories on Instagram.
And then, of course, the book is called Declutter Your Photo Life, Curating, Preserving, Organizing, and Sharing Your Photos by Adam Pratt, to whom I'm speaking right now. And that's available from Rocky Nook.
Yeah, this has been a passion project. It's actually my 8th book that I've written.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's been a while, but it's my 8th book, and honestly, it's my favorite. Probably every author should say that. This really comes out of a passion, and honestly, part of it is we organize literally millions of photos a year, and there's something. I mean, I love the work, but sometimes there's something a little tragic about it when we know that everybody has better cameras than ever, more access, and a lot of us are taking a lot of bad photos, right? And so we want to help people curate what they've got and try to help and coach them to take better photos that are like really memorable and important and personal and full of emotion and connection. So that's some of the motivation behind the book.
It's going to be interesting in about 20 or 30 years when people look back and they say, were people eating a lot of sour things because of all the fish face selfies that they're going to be in their camera roll?
Right. Well, and honestly, if they're even there, I mean, that's, I'm sure you've heard and probably talked about the whole digital dark age concept of like, we're taking more photos than ever, but if we don't curate them and back them up and keep them safe in some system, 100 years, they're going to go, man, I heard about the proliferation of cameras, but where are the photos?
Exactly. Well, thank you, Adam, for your time, for your expertise. And again, the book is Declutter Your Photo Life, Curating, Preserving, Organizing, and Sharing Your Photos. And the name of the business is Chaos to Memories. Thank you, Adam, and best wishes.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you for listening to the Dead Pixel Society podcast. Read more great stories and sign up for the newsletter at www.thedeadpixelssociety.com.